What's poppin', y'all? It's your man Tyler C, and this is the Community Experiment. Yo, each week on the Community Experiment, we sit down with individuals to tell their stories because we believe that stories have a way of strengthening the community around us. This week, we sat down with the homie David Scott of Pacific Pine Films and the PA homie David Hanson to talk about diabetes and the effects that diabetes have on the community around us. So let's hop in.
Yeah, so a little bit of backstory. I've only been a diabetic for almost a full year. It'll be November 28th was my diagnosis date, which makes November really cool too because it's Diabetes Awareness Month, and then it's like my diversity or however you want to say it.
Okay.
Is that a thing?
Is that a thing?
That is a thing.
Diversary.
Diversity, yeah.
I mean, I think it's cool how you kind of celebrate it like that.
Yeah.
You know, like, because it kind of could be... I'll let you finish. It's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry,
no,
I'm just excited about that.
And so when I went to go look around online, because you want to kind of find the people who you can communicate with, you can have conversations with, because you kind of feel alone. Most people that have type 1 diabetes, it's a very small percentage of people. Between type 1 and type 2, it's about 10% of diabetics are type 1 diabetics, and then the rest, like 90%, are type 2. And so you feel a little alone. And then, so I went looking around, and then there's like this really cool group called Beyond Type 1.
Okay.
And it's something that Nick Jonas actually was a co-founder of.
Nick Jonas, the Jonas Brothers?
Yes.
Does
he have diabetes?
He has type 1 diabetes.
That's wild. I didn't know this.
Look at that.
Shout out to the Jonas Brother. If he comes to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and he comes on the show, you going to co-host?
Yes, I will
There
co-host.
we go. Shout out to Nick Jonas. I mean, if you out
Yeah.
here, bro, come through.
Yeah. So yeah, he co-founded that, and they kind of have their own like Twitter / Instagram / Facebook kind of forum kind of deal.
Yeah.
And so I went on there, I got myself like a profile and everything, and then I was able to ask people questions and everything like that. And it was like so warming and so accepting that it was so easy to kind of find some online friends who were dealing with this kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Let's go ahead.
Going back to questions about your story. Going back to, was it November 28th?
Yes.
Is that your diversity? What was that like that day, and then maybe even leading up to that day? Like because I mean, a lot of people don't know what it's going to feel like if they have type 1 diabetes or develop type 1 diabetes, and they're like,
Dude, when I saw you, I remember like, I saw you like kind of in that process of figuring out what was going on, and I was like worried.
Yeah.
Like, that was intense, man.
Yeah.
Like, oof. Yeah.
So, I would say back in August of 2018 is when I started feeling the symptoms of it. One day, I kind of got really flu-like symptoms, and I was just really sick. I stayed home from work, and I just kind of worked from home from the couch. The next day, I felt completely fine. I was like, okay, well, I guess that was just kind of a one-day flu kind of deal. And then I just kind of started feeling other kind of symptoms. Like I started kind of like feeling some tension in my hands. I started feeling some tension in my legs when I'd sleep. Like I'd wake up with like these terrible leg cramps. I was like always excessively thirsty, always excessively going to the bathroom. And it was a constant thing. I'd be waking up in the middle of the night needing to get water or needing to go to the bathroom. It was like I lost a lot of sleep during that time. I lost about 40 pounds. I was about 170 pounds, and when I finally went and got checked, I was about 128. And I was able to see my ribs. That was kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
My wife at the time was like, "Man, you've been really looking good recently."
oh no!
like yeah.
Shout out to Rachel. Shout out to Rachel.
And I'd just be sitting there like, I have no idea why I look this good.
That's so good. He's ripped. He's like, he had little t-shirts, clothes. I'm tired, but I'm at her cutout. Oh, no.
Yeah. And so with that, and then like I kind of had some blurry vision. Like I couldn't really focus on anything. I just felt like I'd be sitting there staring at a computer screen, and I just had no motivation to work. I couldn't really even focus on the work I was doing. And that was just really kind of a hard season. And yeah, and then finding out on the day of diagnosis, that was a pretty earth shattering day. It was pretty emotional. We were already putting together our death letters to. No, we weren't. It wasn't that dramatic, but
I was like, oh damn. But I'm making no more jokes today.
but that's how it felt though. Like it really
Sure.
felt like man, like life is done. But then yeah, and then dealing with all that, well, my blood sugars come back down because I was giving myself insulin. Like my eyes were blurry, like pretty much all through the month of December. And that so happened to be the same month that we were like really busy with weddings too.
Oh, okay.
So I had to wear these big old reading glasses when we were running around with cameras and things. And the first one we did, I wasn't aware that my eyes were becoming blurry. So like we were on the way to the wedding and my eyes were slowly, progressively getting blurry throughout the day.
Oh man.
And so any shot that I got that day was very super lucky because I could not see what I was doing. And yeah, that was rough.
Yikes. At what point did you what was the process of because I remember we got coffee at like Indaba and you were talking about your doctors or your physicians or whatever kind of like going through the process of I guess like saying it wasn't this, it wasn't this, it wasn't this. What was that process like though?
So during this time when I was having all these crazy symptoms, my wife, she works at the general surgery clinic at Kootenai, and she was kind of asking around her nurses that she works with, and they're like, "It sounds like diabetes." And I'm kind of sitting there because with my ignorant thinking, I was like, "Well, I'm relatively healthy. I go running. There should be no reason why I have diabetes or anything like that." And then that day that we went in, or I went into one of those clinics that you go to when you don't have insurance because I didn't have insurance at the time. I got my blood sugars tested, and I got my urine sampled as well. And pretty shortly after I had done those tests, they come in and tell me, we need to send you to a specialist because you should be in a coma right now.
Jeez.
Yeah. And, I still, at the time, I didn't really grasp what was going on. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. And so I go home, I kind of get ready for the next thing. And then
Wait,
all
did
of a
they
sudden,
say anything like, this is the specialist we're sending you to, or like, you just need to go see a specialist because...
Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much what happened. Really? And they didn't. I mean, they kind of told me what kind of special it was, but they
hemmed it high, like...
they kind of seemed like they didn't want to say the definite answer because I don't think they fully knew what was going on.
Sure.
And so I went to the specialist, and we checked my blood sugar again, and it was like in the 400s. So it's like what's the measurements, like milligrams to deciliters? Yeah. So so a normal person's blood sugars are usually between 70 and 150 milligrams of deciliters.
Okay.
Which measurements I don't really know what that actually means, but
David, do you know?
As far as what it means, it's just the amount of blood or the amount of glucose in your blood.
Yes,
At
that
a point in time.
And so a normal person's is 70 to 150. Mine was 400. And
It was like 3 times upper limit of normal.
exactly.
You're like,
And then
scary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then fun fact, Nick Jonas, his was in like 750. So like I was doing better than Nick Jonas.
shots fired.
Yeah.
We need a sound effect board.
Stronger than a Jonas brother over here.
Hey,
Yeah.
Hey.
But he was 13 when he was diagnosed, so
Oh wow.
I was 30.
More common.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Wait, what's more common?
To early onset type 1 diabetes, it's usually diagnosed in childhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was actually one point called adolescent diabetes because it was
Type 1 was.
Type 1 was, yeah.
Wow.
Because it's more common in children than it is in adults.
Yeah, I have a homie. We have some friends who their little son is I believe, I apologize if I'm getting this wrong, but I believe their son is a type 1 diabetic, and he's going through that process in school, and even too, like what on the parent side, knowing that you have a child who's dealing with this in school, you're away from
Right?
them, like
Yeah.
how intense it could
Terrifying.
be. Oh, I couldn't imagine, man.
Oh yeah, it's pretty intense. I couldn't imagine getting it at like my son Grayson's age at like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Because then you're poking and prodding and you're giving yourself injections, and
Mm-hmm.
a kid doesn't fully understand that. Which for me, like, I mean, it was hard for like the first month, but then once I got used to it, it was like, it's like normal life now.
Mm.
For a kid, you're growing, and then your body just doesn't react to it as well as an adult. So right now, I would still consider myself in the quote unquote honeymoon phase of my diabetes, where it's still pretty easy to regulate.
Okay.
A child, they don't really go through a honeymoon stage. They pretty much go right into it, and so it becomes a pretty hard struggle pretty much all through their entire life.
Yeah.
Where for me, it's been a bit easier because I'm a bit more conscious of what I need to eat.
Right. Right.
I still eat. I'm still allowed to eat things like I can eat sugar. Like, for example, I ate a big old cookie today.
Okay.
Didn't give myself enough insulin for it, so just before we started, I had to like inject myself real quick.
I heard you say, "Oh dang," and then I was like, "Oh, where did David?" I just like, we just pop off somewhere.
Yeah, it was like 2:05, and I was like, "Oh, I need to get myself some insulin," and so that probably should be brought back down. But yeah,
How often do you have to test yourself?
pretty regularly. They say 7 to 8 times a day.
Okay. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, and then if your blood sugar is too low, then you need to be checking to make sure it's being brought back up. And how to bring your blood sugar back up is you have to have some sort of sugar or some sort of glucose gels or something like that. I even have like a little emergency shot if case I like became completely unconscious, that someone will need to get that ready and just stab me and bring me back to life, essentially.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's pretty intense stuff.
So can you all, I mean, either one of you, I don't know who wants to take it, but can you
Yeah.
all actually break down like what diabetes is? Or I guess the
Like all the different types and things.
yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to say it or you.
I mean, you have type 1 diabetes if you want
Yes.
to. So
Yeah.
jump off.
All right. Yeah. Cool. So there are a few different types of diabetes. The two main ones are type 1 and type 2, but I'm gonna kind of go from from the early onset to whatever. So there's a type called pre-diabetes,
Okay.
which that's a kind of a form of type 2 diabetes. It's more or less warning signs that you need to be taking better care of yourself. That's your body kind of telling you, hey, you need to start eating a little bit healthier, you need to start exercising a little bit more.
Yeah.
In type 2, kind of to bring it back to that, usually happens when you're a lot older too. So you're usually in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. It usually doesn't happen like when you're younger at all, unless you are just like really, really unhealthy.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a huge increase of type 2 or child onset type 2 diabetes.
Really?
Just
Yeah.
given the food options.
Yes.
Do you think
certain
Lotario has diabetes?
100%. I would be surprised if he didn't.
Okay. If you don't know who
Yeah.
that is, he's a Google him.
In
Kill him.
Ooh. Shout out Lotario. If you're in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, come through, bro. Come through. We praying for you.
I'm sorry if I said you have diabetes. And you do.
Wow. He a big boy though. He a big boy.
So yeah, so that's pre-diabetes. Type 1 is the type of diabetes you just kind of get. You can get it through kind of a virus that's in the environment.
wow.
It can be genetic. My case isn't. I wouldn't say it's genetic because nobody else in my family has type 1.
Okay.
But yeah, it could be like your environment, and I just even read an article yesterday that like most people that have type 1 are in more northern countries because we're more inside and around other people. That if we have a strand of DNA or whatever that can get us type
Susceptible
1,
or whatever,
yeah, and that virus can get in. And basically, what it does is that it tricks your immune system into thinking that your pancreas is the enemy of your body, that it is the virus of your body. And so it kind of works to kill off your pancreas, killing off the cells that produce the insulin and things. And so at that point, you become completely insulin dependent, having to take insulin shots like I have to do every single day. And I usually take about give or take, I take about 1 to 4 shots a day on a good day.
Got you.
I take one pen that's a long form pen, so it lasts for the entire day. And then I take a short form pen, which you take when you eat. Okay. So, and then you do kind of some math, and you have to figure out how many units you need to take to combat the amount of carbs you're eating.
Yeah.
And for a while, I was eating a low carb diet, and then that was kind of having some sort of like effects because I was eating way too much red meat, and so I kind of went back to eating pretty regularly. But when I was doing the low carb diet, I didn't have to take as much insulin because, well, the insulin wasn't really doing anything. All it was doing was make my blood sugars crash, where I'd have to like grab sugar and bring it back up. Right. But other than that, that's basically what type 1 is. Okay. And then I kind of already explained what type 2 is. It's it can be the lack of exercise and diet, but that it's not just that. And when I talk about like people making jokes about diabetes, they often make jokes about just straight up sugar causing type 2 or straight up carbs. Like like for example, I just saw the other day like a video of someone making like some crazy pizza cake thing. And like in the comments, you're just seeing, oh man, that's just, diabetes waiting to happen. Right. And that's actually not really what initially causes type 2 diabetes. Like, so if you were to eat that and then you were going to like continue working out and being healthy for like the rest of the week, it's not going to affect you. It's not going to cause type 2 diabetes. But what really causes it is both the lack of diet and exercise, but then it's also older age too. So like my grandmother, she has type 2 diabetes, but that's just because she's older and she can't do a lot for herself anymore. Right.
Because go ahead. A lot of what happens is your muscles and the cells in your bodies lose their sensitivity to insulin, so they don't react to the insulin anymore. And the insulin tells all the cells in your body, "Hey, there's glucose. Grab it. Let's use it for energy." Instead, it's like, what sugar? I don't see any sugar, because they don't see the insulin essentially.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I don't know.
Definitely.
It's because it is weird to conceptualize like what. So if you have a terrible diet, like 100% of the time, and you're eating a bunch of sugar and carbs all the time and not doing anything about it, your body's so used to seeing insulin, it's like, I'm going to start ignoring this. Yeah. Essentially, like the cells are like, wow, insulin's always here. I can't possibly need to respond to it all the time. Yeah. But you can also age up to the point where it's like, my pancreas is just 110 years old or whatever.
Right.
Or 80 or 90. And you know what I'm saying? So the cells inside the pancreas may not secrete enough insulin, and then the cells outside of the body may not respond to the insulin that's secreted.
Yes.
Man, that's wild. Let's take a quick break.
Yeah.
So my brain can get around this.
More sugar.
Yeah.
It's glucagon. And then you're like...
Glucagon.
Glucagon? Like glucose, because it is telling your body to break down other...
Glucagon
does sound like a Pokemon.
I pick you. We out here. What up? It's your boy Glucagon.
Glucagon.
It's your man Glucagon. We out here for the 99 to 2000. You know what it is. That's crazy. Man, I never really... And we're back with David Scott and David Hansen. Almost said Hallen. I apologize. That's David Hansen.
I spent a lot of time with their family. We're cool.
Shouts to them and shouts to the people who just walked past. If you're ever out here on Sherman when we're recording, make sure you don't knock on the window.
Has that happened before?
So the last time I was out, it must have been like a month ago. Somebody walked by and were like, like kind of like that kid who like walks past when you're in like elementary school and he like randomly has a hall pass and he's like, we out here. and then like 5 minutes later you see him walk past with the principal or something. Oh man, shout out to Brandon King. That's what I just thought about, man.
That happens at weddings all the time when you're like in the middle of doing like a photo session. You're like getting like a really cool shot with your own, and then all of a sudden you see some sort of guy like, hey, in the background if we're like downtown somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
they're in a wedding dress or like formal stuff. Like, get out of here. That's wild.
You literally want to choose this moment to ruin somebody's wedding memories. Come on, man.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Like coming back into the whole talk about diabetes. Like, in your profession where you're constantly going, it's interesting. One, it's interesting to me how you navigate around that. But even more so, like knowing kind of your background, because if you don't remember, David Scott came on the podcast about a year ago. So make sure you go back and listen to his first episode. But in that episode, you talked about how you were a runner and how you were pretty active when you were a kid, and like then now being in a profession where you're not. You're sitting at a desk sometimes because you're editing,
right?
But when you're out in the field, you're on the move. So like, how do you navigate that world?
You know, for me, it's actually been a lot easier than you would think. I just kind of, so what I usually do, I'll check my blood sugars probably like usually on a way to a wedding, and just kind of see where it's at. And then I like give myself like a Cliff Bar or something that has like carbs and sugar. And then I just kind of let myself eat that without any insulin or anything. And then I just kind of run on that all day.
Gotcha.
And then for me, I've gotten really good at just like listening to how my body feels. So if I'm starting to feel like a little shaky, a little bit lightheaded or anything like that, that's when I usually will go reach in and grab something just to throw in my mouth real quick, because I don't have time to just like go off to the side and like check my blood sugars and like do whatever I need to do. I just grab the snack that I have, and then I just go back to work. It's been pretty easy. I'm sure there's some people that would probably think it would be a lot harder to do, especially the people that, again, have dealt with it all their life, and they're a little bit more up and down, where I'm a little bit more even flow right now, or ebb and flow. And so I don't have to worry about it as much right now. I just really just kind of listen to my body and just how am I feeling. Usually by the end of the day, my blood sugars are usually relatively low. Not like dangerously low, but like they are usually, I'd say usually like 85, maybe 75, which is pretty good still.
Yeah. And overall, how do you think that it's affected your like just diet in general? I mean, I think earlier you said you don't have a whole lot of constraints, but
no, I'm a lot more conscious about exactly how much I'm eating, because I have to do the math to counteract it.
And that's another thing. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I remember we had a friend come in town, the same friend who has the child with type 1 diabetes, and I believe she has. I don't know what type of diabetes she had, but I remember her saying, "Oh, hold up real quick, I need to do some math."
Yeah,
and I was just like, "Oh, okay, this is a whole part of it." So please continue, sir.
Yeah. So like say example, because today I had like a turkey sandwich and I had some chips. I kind of
healthy.
Yeah, kind of. The chips may not be so healthy, but I actually chose the exact amount of chips I was going to have because of what it says on the nutrition facts on the back of the bag.
Yeah.
Because it shows you how many carbs are in it. And so for me, and every diabetic is different when they do their insulin. So what I do for insulin may be completely different than what somebody else might be doing.
Got you.
So I take 1 unit every 10 grams of carbs. I think that's what I do. Yeah. So if it's like 26 grams of carbs, I usually will divide by 10. It's usually like 2.6. So I just have like 2 units of insulin kind of deal. So I just, that's how I kind of work it.
So it's basically just like understanding where you are and where you need to be while you're being conscious of what you're eating. Yeah.
And then you always check your blood sugar before you eat too, because if I'm like at like 150, for example, that's like kind of like that cutoff. Really, I've heard in many places that you should really be at more like 140 than 150. 150 is kind of touching the danger zone a little too much. But so if I'm at like 150, then I need to take that 1 extra unit of insulin. So I'm taking 2 units of insulin and then 1 more. So I'll be like taking 3 that day instead of 2.
Interesting. So David Hanson, from a I guess the medical model point of view, like when somebody is diagnosed with diabetes, actually, I'm gonna wait to ask that question. One of the things that like was interesting when I did my physical last year. Last year sucked, like at least for me. I don't know about everybody else. Last year I went.
Last year was pretty rough for me too.
Yeah. I don't know what was going on last year, but forget 2018. But I went to my yearly physical, and they told me like this is when you need to start really paying attention to stuff. Between, 28 and 35, you really need to start paying attention. And the lady told me, she was like going through my family history, and she was like, do either of your parents have high blood, or I guess I had high cholesterol? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Were either of your parents diabetic? Yeah, both. And she was like, you have a 100% chance of being diabetic and having high cholesterol.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, well, damn. Like, what? What are you saying?
Yeah, exactly.
But like, can you speak about that a little bit? Like how, like either one, it doesn't matter. Either one of you. How is that true? One, and then how do you kind of?
I wouldn't say 100% chance.
Okay.
Like if you didn't eat any any carbs or sugar or saturated fats or whatever stuff that's really unhealthy for you and doesn't really have a lot of great nutritional value. The chances of you getting diabetes over someone that doesn't have a positive family history are a lot higher.
Okay.
So you're going to have to work much harder than someone to say, I don't know my family history, so let's just say my parents don't have diabetes. The chances are that I am not as prone to developing diabetes later on in life. However, if your diet is stellar and mine is crap, also being black, I have a higher genetic predisposition for developing diabetes. And I'm going to walk that back because I don't know how true that is. I don't know if that's a socioeconomic risk factor. Like in the black community, there's things like food deserts and all that kind of stuff. Anywho, you are at a pretty high risk of developing diabetes, high cholesterol, hypertension, heart disease. They're all kind of a fun bundle that we get to look out for when we are in that 28 to 35 range, especially knowing that that's part of our family history.
And then how do you, I mean, as somebody who's in that age range, like what are steps that you go through to like, not necessarily prevent, but just like live a healthy life? When you say eating healthy or like, what does that look like?
I think there's a lot of, it's interesting. Nutritional science is not like I don't know a ton about it. I mean, I know enough to tell people like, hey, eat healthy. But that means like a lot of like leafy green vegetables are going to be good for you. Eat a diet high in fiber because fiber takes a lot. It still breaks down to glucose in the end. But it's a longer process essentially. So you get more, how do you want to say it? I guess bang for your buck.
Okay.
Right.
And then it also helps to essentially like, I don't want to say clean out your blood, but it's just better for you.
Gotcha.
Less red meats, things that are high in fat, obviously are going to be a lot healthier.
Wait, you said things that are high in fat?
Sorry, things that are low in fat.
Okay.
Will be healthier for you.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean it sounds
probably just
simple,
more,
but it is. I mean, it kind of is, but it's not once you start looking at like food packages. If you're like, oh, I eat lean cuisine or whatever, and you're like, oh man, there's a ton of sodium in lean cuisine.
Yeah.
And then that feeds into like your propensity to develop hypertension or high blood pressure.
All right, y'all, that is it for this week. To learn more about the Community Experiment, make sure you go out to communityexperiment.com. Also, a huge shout out to the homie David Scott and the homie David Hanson for coming on and giving us some of that knowledge. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.
Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner! Go?
Excellent. Yeah, I saw you guys out there.